You're good.
So, skiing with 20-year-olds
Skiing with 20-year-olds. Yeah, yeah, that's
and
right.
you're keeping up, or
Well, just about, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it depends. If we go into mogul fields, it's a different story, but it's okay.
you look like you got a nice tan. You're looking healthy.
Yeah, not bad. It's freezing though. It's like minus 20 at the top of the mountain. So
Oh,
we were out
geez.
today. We didn't stay long, but how are
No.
you? You've been traveling a bit?
Yeah, at the beginning of the month, I was traveling a bit to New York, was there for election day,
Okay.
was uneventful, I should say. I had a lot of Europeans message like, what's going on? I'm like, nothing.
I'm just having a drink in the bar.
Yeah, I just heard a couple of bankers, talking about, something about the election in the markets, and that was the most I heard about election the whole day. So,
Okay,
yeah,
that's good.
it was a
I,
little
I
bit
guess
anticlimactic. I was gonna say it was a little bit anticlimactic being
okay.
there. You thought like,
Yeah.
oh, it's gonna be election day in the US. It was like in New York, it was like nothing else. There was like
That's right.
nothing going on.
New York's its own little world. Hey, Paddy's here. Will we let him in?
Yeah.
Yeah, we suppose we should.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Patrick Liddy Energy Web is connecting. All sorts of technical problems. So I'm glad you're in. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you were asking Sarah or myself, I'd say this one we could
We
have a
just
bigger
hang
problem.
out, keep waiting.
Yeah, yeah. Switch it on,
I
switch it
could
on.
I will address that as part of my so I did spend a period of time trying to help people get on calls, and it's pretty painful experience.
Okay, okay.
As like a customer service person
Yeah.
or
Yeah, I
something.
had a startup and video calling was part of what we did. And what you do as a startup founder is you get, right in there with the customers and spend a lot of time saying, see on the top left of the Chrome bar, you see the way there's a little lock. Will you click on the lock? Okay, now will you press
I don't
allow?
see a lock. There's no
Uh,
lock.
Oh, this sounds
Uh,
like me with my accountant and bookkeeping software. He always looks at me like I'm the biggest idiot. He's like, look at the button there, put your invoice in here, don't
yeah,
forget the VAT. And I'm always like,
yeah,
this hurts.
yeah. No one is winning. No one is winning when that.
no,
Nobody's winning.
nobody's winning. Well, you're here now, so that's the main thing. So thanks for joining us. Paddy, I think you were one of the first uh, people I spoke to about the podcast, and you got quite animated and excited and started talking about great companies and all sorts of things. And then you kindly said that you did listen to some of the shows. So we thought we'd invite you in to tell your story and the Lego story. So thanks for joining.
Gosh, it's terrible if you think I'm going to tell you the Lego story. No, you're right, Martin. I was excited when you asked about great companies, and at the time I was thinking a lot about how Irish rugby was taking over the world, and it was puzzling me. But then I listened to some of your shows, and all the Irish people picked Irish companies. So I was like, God, I can't be that guy who keeps that going, you know? You really put me under pressure to think of
Yeah,
somewhere else.
I think you picked a really good one. I think we're going to struggle to pick holes in them, but we'll do our best. But let's start with you and go back to the start really, and studying engineering, and then coming out of engineering, working as an engineer, and then starting your first company. So give us a little bit of a flavor for why you did that, what the kind of background was, and then we'll roll through and get to Lego towards the end.
Cool. In fairness, I have small children. I'm bored with Lego. But so yeah, my background is I'm an electrical engineer. I'm not a very good electrical engineer, but I studied it nevertheless. And how I started working for myself was I wanted to move to the West at one point in my life. I suppose my experience at the time was as a energy efficiency consultant, and there was no such thing as energy efficiency consultants in Clare or Limerick or Galway. So I couldn't find a job. So I decided to be a one-man show energy efficiency consultant down in Clare. And that was fine and good, but it led me to my first real non just one-man show business opportunity, which was a thing called electricity demand response,
Yeah.
which was an idea. Well, it's an idea as old as time, but it's an idea in energy markets that I suppose the way energy markets generally work now is you have controllable generators and predictable consumers. So you can predict that a lot of people will watch Coronation Street or name your TV show, and that demand will go up during that period. So if you're running an electricity system, you can predict that you're going to need to increase generation output. And in the traditional sense, you could control generators and you could get them to ramp up to meet that demand, or go down during the night or whatever. The challenging thing that has happened is that with the rise of wind and solar, they are incredibly great. They give us lots of clean, cheap energy, but they are not controllable in the same way as a traditional generator. You can't ramp them up.
Yeah.
So the idea of demand response is to create a financial incentive for energy consumers to reduce demand when the grid has a shortfall of generation available to it. So this idea existed very strongly in America. It was a big thing in America. It wasn't really a thing in Ireland, but the idea was there. I came across it and I began to, in my energy efficiency work, come across customers who would have that flexibility. And who I mean by that is large industrial sites, like the cement manufacturer can stop making cement for an hour or two, because what their job is really is crushing up rocks, mixing it up in a large washing machine effectively, and putting that powder into a silo, which is available for trucks to come and get whenever they want to. So they could stop for a few hours if there was an emergency of not enough generation on the grid, or sites with backup generators. So a large number of large industrial sites would have backup generators. Hospitals, hotels, data centers have lots of backup generation and have the ability to switch over to their backup generation if there was a grid shortage. So in designing an electricity grid, you could facilitate a tremendously larger quantity of renewables on that grid if you knew that at times that you're short, you could rely on this cohort of customers to reduce their electricity demand. So I thought that would be a consultancy opportunity. I was wrong. I sort of stumbled into it, and it turned it into a business where we would recruit customers. We had to build a whole software system to monitor their electricity demand and ultimately to communicate with them and control reducing their demand, and communicate with the electricity system operator in Ireland called EirGrid to get them to reduce demand when these events actually occurred. So that's kind of how I stumbled into entrepreneurship, Martin. First of all, I couldn't get a job. And secondly, this idea was there. And I didn't realize I thought it was a consultancy gig, and it turned into, actually, it was a business.
So
what years were this? Sorry. When was this?
So 2006, started working for myself. And I think I have a business plan There's like a 3-pager of this is what you could do, of what ultimately became Activation Energy from around that time. And then we actually became operational in 2011. So an overnight success.
But 2006, I mean, this was not, because you said you were looking to the West, but I remember there was the big Con Edison blackout on the East Coast of the US. That was 2002 or 3, right? Where it was clearly nobody was looking at who do we call to reduce demand right now before that happened. And that shut down airport. I mean, that was huge.
Sure. So I mean, just to be clear, demand response doesn't fix all your problems, in that an emergency, a disaster can still happen, whereby a part of the power line, I think sometimes these things occur because of transformers, which are sort of these interchanges on the electricity system. If they blow or something goes wrong, no amount of generation or demand control can fix that. That's just the pipes are broken, working on that. But America has generally been a leader in demand response, in that the driver for energy demand, or a driver for energy demand in the US, is air conditioning. If you take Florida, it's very straightforward. They always have the air conditioning on. The load is relatively flat. It's fairly straightforward. But if you take New York, that's not the case. They only use their air conditioning sometimes of the year. And then to exacerbate that, New York only has a heat wave every, let's say, 10 years. So you've got to decide, are you going to build a power station waiting for a heat wave in New York? Because electricity is a real-time product. There isn't really, I mean, we talk about batteries and we can talk about that, but it's not a large part of the electricity system. In real terms, electricity is generated and consumed at the same moment. So building generation plant waiting for heat waves is not an economically wonderful thing to do. So demand response has long existed in those parts of the States.
Right. And then you started talking about how it tied into renewables, but I'm not sure I quite understood that part.
Sure. Forgive me, listeners.
This is one of Sarah's pet subjects, so it's all good.
So electricity systems are real-time systems. Coffee shops are not real-time systems. If there is a peak period in a coffee shop where everyone wants a cup of coffee, people will queue and wait for coffee. And at other times, the coffee shop will be empty and it will just be selling no coffee. And this is fine. So you've got a buffer there. We call it queuing. In electricity, there is no such thing. There's no opportunity to wait for your electricity. When you hit the light switch button, it instantly starts. And indeed, if it didn't instantly start, the system in its nature would actually collapse. It must be that the quantity of generation and the quantity of demand match each other at all times. So all electricity systems have what are called system operators who are communicating with the generators on that system, getting them to ramp up and ramp down in response to the needs of the system. Okay. When you add a bunch of renewables, and as I said, I'm very for renewables, but what they don't do is take phone calls. They do what they want. So if it is sunny, solar panels generate. If it is windy, wind farms generate. If something happens, so a part of your generation plant suddenly becomes unavailable to you. So let's say a transformer blows up and it means that a wind farm suddenly can't get access to the grid anymore where it was connected. Then that power is suddenly not available to the system operator. So he or she needs to get another generator to ramp up quickly to meet that demand, to keep the show on the road. Renewables are wonderful generators of electricity, but they're not great for running an electricity system. You need other things to balance it out. So today we talk a lot about batteries and storage, and they're great because they have some level of ability to do that, because they can take in power when there's too much wind and give it back out when there's not that much wind. In Ireland at the moment, I guess probably in much of Europe, we're experiencing, I'm going to mispronounce this German word, it's called a Dunkelflaute, which is a low patch for wind and a low patch for sun. So effectively, the wind hasn't blown in Ireland for the last 3 weeks. It has not been windy. It is November. It's dark outside. It's 4:30. It's already dark outside as I sit here in my office. There is very little sun. So the quantity of batteries that one would need to store for this extreme event, which is rare, but 3 weeks of very little wind is a big deal, but it happens. And you need to have other solutions for those periods of time. So the alternatives, one of those alternatives is demand response. It's the idea of getting customers, and to date, it's generally large customers, just because of the economics, to be flexible in their need for electricity. And that could be that they're willing to drop off the system for 5 seconds. That would be valuable to the electricity system, or it could be for 5 hours. But there's value in all of these things in how the electricity system works.
Going back to 2011, you started seeing demand from customers and you started building a platform. And 5 years later, you had a business, and then roll on a couple of more years, you end up getting acquired by a US company.
That's right. So we were very fortunate, I suppose, from the beginnings. Demand responses at the time was relatively rare around the world. The world leader in demand response was a company in Boston called Enernoc.
Yeah.
And they had a function to look around the world and see who's doing something such that they could ultimately acquire them. And they stumbled upon us. They knocked on our door. They knocked before we got up and running, in that it was such an obscure thing that they inquired in Ireland and said, is there a demand response business here? And someone in the electricity sector said, oh, you should talk to that guy, Patrick Liddy. He's trying to start one. That was all I had at the time, was trying to start one. So we had a conversation, and I should say that conversation, it's something for anyone starting a business. It's tremendously valuable, because that conversation was part of my business plan to ultimately get us funded. I could point to, in any business plan, you say, what is the exit? I was able to say, oh, I had a conversation with Eneroc. They're a NASDAQ listed company and they're interested in international growth. So I believe they're going to acquire us. And maybe 3.5 years later, they acquired us. I began the conversation with them before we had a business, and I maintained it. I would find an excuse to email their business development guy every so often, get him to respond to a consultation that was going on in Ireland or something, just so that we could keep that link up and running.
Fabulous. So tell us about the funding and tell us about the exit.
I suppose the interesting part of the funding was who any reasonable person would describe as my co-founder was an investor that I stumbled upon through Dublin BIC and their angel network. He was a chap in the electricity industry. Any normal investor would not invest in such a confusing and convoluted business. So what I needed was another energy geek. And I stumbled upon this angel who he got it. And he not only invested, but became a full-time employee of the company and was core to its success. So that was great.
Yeah. And then talk us through the exit. And then you went to spend 3 or plus years at the company. So yeah, just talk us through that kind of transaction and next steps.
So the exit came about, as I said, they were a NASDAQ listed company. NASDAQ listed companies or any listed companies are slaves to the stock price. They were being told by the markets that too large a portion of their revenue was from the PJM market, the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland market in the US. So they wanted to diversify, and we were diversification, right? So we weren't an Irish business. We were a management team to get them into the UK is really what they were buying.
Right.
And the same day they acquired a German business, the same day they purchased us, they were on a shopping spree. But it's a learning in timing, Martin, in that had we held out for 6 months waiting for a better price, they would not have bought us because the company strategy changed. We joined the company, and literally within 3 months, they decided to diversify not geographically, but by product, that they were going to go down this road of other software products. So, I mean, we were a successful acquisition for us, for them. There's 50 people working in Dublin still who work for that office, that company. And that team manage programs all over the world, in Korea, in Australia, in Texas. There are people in Dublin managing these things for them. So we were a successful acquisition, but they had changed their mind about that sort of thing immediately after at a corporate level. So it'll just tell you about timing. We were just very lucky there that they were in the market.
Yeah. And what do you think would have happened if you had held out for a bigger price 6 months down the road?
So what would have happened, Martin, is we would have grown the business and I'd be a wealthier man.
Okay. Right. Very straight, clear answer. Yeah. And what was it like going in then from being your own boss and calling the shots to working for a NASDAQ listed company and managing all the politics of that?
So it was relatively good. They were very good to me. I had a great time working with them. They were really good guys to work for. And I got to report to the president of the company and learn a lot about how things work. Okay. Where I've never really worked in a senior role in a big company. It was great. It was a great experience. And also I had earn-out obligations about meeting certain targets, and they look very much like what your role is as a startup founder. Well, I certainly felt an obligation to leave a business in Ireland, not, to try and grow it, such that they were excited about what they had bought and would continue to grow out in Ireland. And nothing to do with me. There was just a great team of us around, and that really became what they invested in, was the team of guys and ladies who were there. They were great people, and that was the success. But that's what drives you on.
That's great.
But it is fair to say I did exit relatively early from that business, and it did leave me with a hunger for going again and starting another business.
Yeah, well, it's quite unique because I guess, first of all, having your potential acquirer before you really get going is pretty cool, And then secondly, I guess a lot of people, they talk about their earn-out, whether it's 2, 3, 4 years, and most of them say it was a horrible time. So it sounds like that wasn't the case for you.
Well, it wasn't in that. Sorry, my earn-out was 2 years and I stayed for 3.5. So It wasn't. I stayed as an employee. because it continued. And like, I do regret, look, I was happy that I left. It was the right thing to do when I chose to do it. But that said, I'd have loved to stay. I think it was a great experience, and it would have continued to be a great experience had I stayed. That company, Enernoc, ultimately was acquired by Enel, the Italian utility multinational. So while it felt very big to me, I mean, maybe it had 500 employees at its peak, it then became a part of many, I don't know, maybe 10,000 employees or something like that when they became part of Enel, which would have been a wildly different experience. And I'd have loved to experience that as well. But you make your decisions,
The entrepreneurial itch came back and you decided to go again and set up a utility augmented reality.
That's right. So a friend of mine introduced me to virtual reality, first of all. And I'm not really a gamer. And the truth is, when I put on a VR headset, I feel sick. And that remains the case to this day.
Right.
Perfect founder for a VR company.
So anyway, but to support him, I could get behind the fact that this was going to be a big deal. He was running a workshop, sort of a get together for people who are into this sort of thing, in Cork, and he invited me along. And to support him, I went down, and someone had an augmented reality headset there. So augmented reality is where you are wearing transparent see-through glasses, and you can see digital information on the glass. If you haven't tried it, the closest experience is if you put the newspaper on the dashboard of your car when you're driving on a sunny day, and you can see the text.
I'm sure it's technically legal, but whatever.
That's a fair approximation of what augmented reality is. My wife is from the Czech Republic, and her parents visit regularly. Part of the business with Activation Energy would be to install metering and monitoring hardware on customer sites around the country. One time during one of their visits, I had the day off because they were visiting, and I got a call from one of our installers that he was installing some equipment for us in this place in Monaghan, and it just wouldn't work for him. He just couldn't get it going. He couldn't get it going, and he was ringing me to ask what did I think, but it had to be done. It was maybe a Friday, and it had to be done because we had some need for this on the Monday. So I had no option but to sit into my car and drive to where he was installing this stuff.
Yeah.
And my wife decided, well, your father-in-law is here. You're going to bring him with you. And he speaks no English, and I speak minimal Czech. So anyway, I got to the site where the works needed to be done. And I walked into the room where my colleague was doing the work, and I looked at it, and within 30 seconds I went, that's upside down. And he went, oh, Jesus. And it was fixed.
Right.
So when I came across augmented reality glasses, what they offer, I suppose, the first product that augmented reality glasses offers is remote eyes, as they would call it, whereby if he had had augmented reality glasses, he would have put them on and rang me and talked me through the installation. And I'd be able to see what he was seeing, and I'd be able to draw on his vision to say, turn that upside down there, or turn that handle clockwise. The other element that augmented reality glasses offers is the idea that the procedure that you should follow, the glasses can guide you through it. So you'd be able to look at a technical task and assemble or do the task step by step, whereby the glasses would be telling you what to do next. And that definitely excited me. So when I came across AR glasses, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the next big thing. And if I don't quit my job now and do this, I'm going to regret it so much. Do you ever think about those guys who are there in the very first part of the internet? And I don't know how true this is, but the narrative is like they set up any crappy old website and made a fortune on it.
Yeah, right.
And like, I just wasn't that into computers to get excited by that. But now that I have a bit more sense, I'm like, geez, what an opportunity. So I felt that AR glasses offered me, a guy with, the ability to create a crappy product, that this would be a big deal. So I started a business that would facilitate exactly what I just said. That guy in Monaghan who's installing something, that it would guide him through the tasks or allow him to do a video call with a colleague to help him have a second pair of eyes. And that's what I started, called UtilityAR.
Yeah.
Uh,
And how did that go?
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's a tremendous learning for me about myself, Martin, in that I've been into this startup game for a lot of years now, and I knew all the sort of truisms about failing fast and minimal
Right.
products and
Yeah.
getting feedback from customers and all that.
Yeah.
And like, I did all those things. I got bad responses, and I went, just carry on. It's a great idea.
I just quit my job. No going back.
Yeah.
boats.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, so I suppose there's two phases to that. The first phase was trying to get everything up and running. And like the truth is with AR glasses, if you show them to people, you will get 95% positive response from people going, yeah, this is the future. I can see that this is the future.
Yeah.
Problem is that they might even buy it off you if you're a good salesman,
Yeah.
but they won't use the goddamn thing. And I'd say if you were to do a scan of virtual reality glasses that exist around the world today, most of them have a layer of dust on them. So
why is that? Is the product just not good, or is it nausea? Is it inertia? Like because it seems to make a lot of sense, right? And I could see exactly why you'd jump on the opportunity.
sorry. So just to say, AR glasses do not have nausea. There's never nausea with AR glasses. What gives you nausea is the same as travel sickness. It's a dislocation between what you're seeing and what you're feeling. Okay, so why you get nausea in a car is your body is saying, I'm sitting still, but your eyes are seeing the world moving around you.
Yeah.
And that gives you nausea in VR for exactly the same reason. In AR, you're seeing the real world around you. You're seeing what's real. So it's not a problem.
Yeah, okay.
Not a problem in AR.
But this is like when Google Glass came out, right? And everyone thought it was cool until nobody used it.
That's right. Yeah, Google Glass is a fair description of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the why, I think what we have come down on is you've got to rethink your podcast, Martin. It's
Okay.
not about what makes
Sarah too, not just me.
We're redoing the podcast.
Okay.
If there's criticism, he directs it to me.
Paddy's now come on, he's taking over. He's the new host.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot my business now. So the question is, what made the Nokia N97 rubbish and the iPhone great? What made Betamax rubbish and VHS great? Why are we on Zoom right now as opposed to Google Meets or Teams or whatever, right? Yeah. And je ne sais quoi.
No answers here.
Design, user experience. I don't know. I struggled a lot when the iPhone first came out because I thought there's no tactile feel. Like, how am I going to be really efficient with this mobile thing?
Yeah.
But
my BlackBerry.
Yeah, people, I mean, it was really hard. I used to go to the Apple store and challenge the salesperson, like, okay, I'm going to type something on my BlackBerry, you type it on your Apple phone, let's see who does faster. And if I win, then I'm not switching. And I would win every time and not switch for years. But eventually you switch because, I mean, at least it was design. It wasn't functionality anymore. It was really design.
What do you mean by design?
It was a more pleasurable experience. So functionally, the BlackBerry was just more practical, but it wasn't very, I don't know, it didn't make me feel good when I looked at it, right? And when I looked at the iPhone, you know, it made me, it was a nice thing to look at. It was more engaging, you know, which is part of the problem, I guess, now with all of us. But I think there really is something about the aesthetics and how you feel about your interaction with something that can draw you in further, even if the functionality is not at the outset anyway, the reason why you switch.
I think that's totally fair, sir, right? I think it's totally fair. But I would say I'd probably agree with you on 10 other items as well. It's a collection of reasons that made the iPhone. And it's sort of like, I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it. On the other hand, Nokia had the N97, which is the one I bought, as opposed to when I had the choice of the two, because it was technically a better product. The point is that it's very hard sometimes to nail down what is the breaking point. And I mean, a depressing truth of having hung out with a lot of virtual reality people, though, as I said, I can't really experience it myself, is they are all waiting for the thing that's going to change everything. And a recent one was Apple brought out a pair of VR glasses,
Yeah.
and everyone reasonably went, "Oh, this is going to be the moment."
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not been.
No. No, it's been a failure, right?
It appears that way. So I just can't say. I can't say why AR has not succeeded. And I mean, but like, just to be clear, video calling is a wonderful thing, and we're all using it, and we all use it a lot. And it's not as used as much as it was during COVID, but still, it's a tremendously large proportion of the business meetings that happen now happen over video call. But like before COVID, when the products were, generally speaking, good enough,
Yeah.
people weren't using them. Martin, you were still flying to Boston or wherever.
So you kind of touch on one of the things I think is very interesting about being a founder, which is, you got to listen to your customers, but also you got to try and get ahead of it a little bit as well. And you got to believe in whatever technology wave or whatever change you believe that, even though they mightn't tell you that they want to, you kind of have an insight that they do, right? Is it the old Henry Ford thing of ask them what they want, they'd say a faster horse, right? So you're trying to listen, but you're also trying to get behind something new and convince people it's the right thing. And I think what you're saying is that it's hard to see when everybody thinks AR is great, but then when you come to say, will you use it? It's a bit like the video example before COVID.
I think as well, like I have a capacity for sales, and that allows me to do two terrible things. One is to convince myself that there's a business because I'm able to sell that product.
Yeah.
And like, that's not just because I'm able to sell it doesn't mean that, the customer will use it. And if they don't use it, then they won't upsell. So you're doomed. And the even worse element is maybe I'm able to sell myself. Like maybe as investors, you should be looking at people going, he's a bit of a salesman. That's a bad thing.
Or you need somebody to balance that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. All right. So we're going to come back to your latest project in a minute. But before we do that, let's pause for a second and talk about the company you've picked. And the company you've picked is Lego. So give us your pitch on why you think Lego is a great company.
I know now, I should have done my research a little bit better. You guys have a series of metrics on which you judge a product.
Yeah.
I just went on my own. So why I think Lego is great is at the most cynical level, it is a toy company and it is tremendously successful at creating toys. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do believe like the fundamental purpose of a company is its fundamental purpose, which is to create that product. It's not a source of employment. It's not a way to give shareholders returns even. It's to deliver on the product that it's meant to deliver. Like that's, and Lego started off as a timber brick company and now is a video game company. Well, it's linked to that. But I think that's what makes it brilliant. But I do understand a little bit about the history of Lego, and what I think is brilliant is it's based upon a product which is incredibly high quality. So if you bought fake Lego products, you'll recognize that Lego products are better than fake Lego products, and that quality is its defense, it's its moat, effectively from the competition. I think it's brilliant in that fundamentally the product is brilliant, right? But that's more about a brilliant product rather than a brilliant company.
Yeah.
What excited me more when I looked into Lego a little bit more is that it has failure in it. So they went through a period of making lots of new, realizing that the world needed more than just Lego toys, that kids wanted video games and they wanted other things. So they went about innovating and they almost went bust. And when I look at the innovations that they did, none of them are bad. They're all reasonable things to go at. They just executed badly at it. And the idea that it's the way you do it, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it, like, is so important that in their current iteration, as they take over the world, like they're good at executing what they do. And like, I love that. Like,
Yeah.
what could be a better measure of a good company than one that executes on the task at hand?
Yeah.
So as a man with small kids, one of my favorite movies is the Lego movie. It's utterly brilliant. Okay. But during that period where it was all going wrong for them, they made another movie called Max Power. And it's also brilliant. It's also brilliant. It's not as good as the successful one, but it's really, really good.
Mhm.
And it was a failure. Like, how awesome is that? That they execution isn't just about making good products. You also got to, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think it's a fantastic, because even though you didn't read the exam question, I think you nailed the answers. So we ask in terms of how do they delight customers, and I think that's pretty obvious. We ask about how do they look after their shareholders, and their financials are really interesting, both in terms of top line and bottom line. We ask about how they treat their employees, and if you look at Glassdoor or any of the things for primarily a manufacturing company, again, they're kind of top quartile. And then we ask about their impact on environment and society, and again, they appear, you can't do complete due diligence, but everything you read about this Danish company seems to knock that on the head. And so they seem to have covered all these bases, which is really unique. And the companies, usually when we get guests on, there's always like one thing we can kind of pick a hole at, but they seem to have covered a lot of it. And as you say, at their heart, this kind of drive towards innovation and new stuff in an industry, in a toy industry, which is about hits, and it's so random. It's like making movies, how they've sort of systemized this innovation process is really unique and interesting. So that's my take on it.
Usually when you see companies try to go to adjacencies, there's got to be so much pressure on all the digital and the film. You usually see companies that are just pure old school product. They usually fail on trying to figure out how to do adjacencies, but it seems like their ability to bring experiences to people, also physical experiences, right? They have Lego parks, they have other kinds of things that are just not the product. It's very Disney-like in that sense, right? And they're executing on that well. I'm surprised they don't get, at least from, again, our light diligence, but I'm surprised they don't get more heat about sustainable materials and plastics.
Mm-hmm.
They changed their packaging, but ultimately this is plastic everywhere. So they said in the annual report that Martin and I read, it was basically like, yeah, we switched to bio-PE, but for the rest of the materials, nothing really meets our quality standards yet. So we don't really have any solutions, but that's cool. And everyone's like, that's fine. I still want to buy Legos, But like, throw away these plastic bags at the grocery store and throw away these plastic cups at the coffee place. But Legos, totally cool.
It's okay. You get a pass.
Somehow they're managing that pretty well. I'm pretty shocked, but they're managing it. Yeah.
They're a plastic company. I mean, it's pretty appalling. And not only are they a plastic company, they're a choke hazard company. Yeah. One of my friends.
You got to talk yourself out of it now.
I've been lucky on that, but one of my friends, his kid put one up his nose, and they spent a night in the emergency room. It's
God, yeah.
If they were pouring the waste plastic into the sea, we'd probably still forgive them.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You're more the expert on sustainability than me, Sarah. So I don't know if you want to dig a little bit further into this.
They do give indication. Their top line isn't growing that much, but they signal to the market that they think it's going to change and the market's going to pick up because the whole segment has had a low CAGR, but it's going to now increase. And they've got this bio-PE going on. Then they say in the next paragraph, which I find super funny, it's like sustainable materials, paragraph 1. And the next paragraph is, we're expanding our manufacturing footprint in Mexico. And they show this like massive facility. And it's like on the same page. It's not even like there's an impact section. And then they just kind of tuck this manufacturing expansion into the financials somewhere where nobody sees it. But they give us a visual. It's a very beautiful plant in Mexico that they just built. Yeah, the Danish are doing something right. I don't know how they're avoiding negative, or we're just not finding it. Our Google algorithms are not really anti-Lego, so I don't know what it is, but you would think this is a massive issue, right? From a sustainability perspective.
They're very good managing the brand, and they're very good telling the story, right? So there's always things that they can be doing better on. So let's move on then to what you're doing now, Paddy. So you're going again, manage power. It's not on your LinkedIn yet, but I believe it's coming. Is that?
It's coming now. It's coming. I hope. Fingers crossed, Martin. There's ways to screw everything up, but it's still there. Learning from my foray into augmented reality is perhaps I should stay in my lane and stick with energy. I am starting a new company around distributed generation assets.
Nice.
The need for electricity is not going away. The need for what I'll call dispatchable generation, things that you can switch on and off, is not going away. What has happened in Ireland, but is the case the world over, is that planning permission and power lines are no longer acceptable. It is almost impossible to get planning permission to build anything. Everyone likes wind farms. No one likes the power lines that are required to connect those wind farms to the grid. The part of the solution that I'm interested in is deploying biofuel generation on energy consumer sites where you have a factory that makes widgets. They have a grid connection. They don't really have planning permission problems. They need a backup generator anyway. So I'm going to them and saying, we will install a backup generator that burns biofuel here on your site. And it will only switch on 100 hours per year, but it will support the grid during those hours, support more renewables fit on the system, and also be available to you in the event of an emergency where your power line goes out and you need to continue to operate. So that's the new business that I'm starting.
Super cool.
Nice. And how are those conversations going, trying to get converting customers to installing these on site in a distributed fashion?
So, I mean, what I offer the customer is something for nothing, whereby they all in the back of their minds know that they need backup generation, or they need more backup generation, or they need new backup generation. Most industrial sites, it's even in their insurance as to what would happen if there was a power cut. Having backup generation reduces their insurance costs in many cases. It's a big deal for any industrial site. So they all know they need this, but they don't have the capital to do it. So the offer is very interesting and exciting to them. The truth that I've learned about this and all innovation is that the barrier is simply mind space and time to get the customer to acquire it. The reason I don't change my car insurance is not that I like paying more for car insurance. It's that my brain is elsewhere and I'm doing other things, and I don't want to devote my time to that car insurance. And the reason I, don't change phone operators, so you're an Apple person and I'm an Android person, the reason we don't change is predominantly that the hassle that it would be is meaningful. So where customers say no to us, it is on the grounds of, we're just saying no for now. We will talk again, but right now we're too busy. Please stop ringing us.
Leave the premises.
I was going to finish that sentence with, come back to us in 2 years, but they don't say that. They say, so what we're selling is a good idea. The challenge, as I said, for everyone is to get to the top of their priority stack. And like, in the world of innovation, you're competing with all other challenges upon that person's time. So, I mean, what we offer is a good idea. Putting up solar panels is also a good idea. Putting up a new ramp for disabled people to more easily get into your site is also a good idea. Changing the water filters so that the water is cleaner coming in and out of your site is a good idea. Everything is a good idea. And you have limited number of individuals on the site who have time to dedicate to all these all good and fair and reasonable ideas.
So when you mentioned in the beginning of the kind of your theme was that you're a good salesperson, so you can sell yourself on your new ideas, you can sell other people. And then we talked about how in your first exit, it was like impeccably beautiful timing. And then the second time around, maybe not. How are you feeling about it for this one then, on the timing of the market issue?
My customer is the electricity system operator, not the customers. The people who will pay for the service, which is the flexibility that we offer to the electricity system, is the system operator. It's a brilliant business and it's a terrible business because there's one buyer
Yeah.
Okay. In any jurisdiction, there's one buyer.
It's like air traffic control. One person in the tower. All the
That's fair. Yeah, yeah. So that is terrible though, because if that one buyer isn't buying, then you're going nowhere, right? However, on the flip side, what's great about them is that they publicly state what it is that they're buying, and they put out to tender. And I am competing with a power station which might be built in Ireland, and I'm saying I can deliver you this capacity at a lower cost, and you have greater certainty that I'll deliver it. So they buy it from a power station. They say to a power station, okay, we'd like you to go and be built. If it gets held up in the courts, which literally everything does in Ireland now, that power station may never materialize. So they can look at what we're offering at a lower cost and with greater certainty to deliver. They are effectively compelled to buy what we sell. So on the timing, Ireland is crying out for this at the moment. And I know internationally we'll focus on our home market to begin with, but I believe every jurisdiction there's opportunities for this.
Super exciting, Paddy. Best of luck with it. And I think with all the experience you have in terms of insights and timing and customers and markets, and having had some success and having had some failure, and that energy to keep going, this is fabulous.